Hello guys, I am Shishpal. Welcome to my channel Maths Pirates. In previous video, we covered the aspect of relationship, right? How the physical quantities, any of the quantities, their characteristic values are completely are relative to the other quantities, right? And covered in detail about the aspect of relation among the physical quantities in the previous video. You can view at that. You can watch my playlist here. Now, hope your day is being good. Coming to the topic of the video, we'll be covering the aspect of the birth of mathematical thinking. Right? See, there was no formal training for those human beings to discuss to call it as a mathematical thinking. There was no formal training as today we do. Some families, they prefer to send their children to tuitions for the better performance in this subject, right? Many people, they prefer coaching centers for for those subjects in which the children are weak, right? But in those days, it was not like if you go to any training or any coaching place, you can gain the subject, right? It was completely provoke. The human beings were evolved mentally, and they adapted. Their evolution of critical thinking was completely provoked with the purpose of survival, because they understand that they need to adapt this system or this type of calculation or this type of values, so that they have their they got they will get their truth, right? See, let's go from the beginning, the absolute beginning, considering there was no formal existence of numbers, right? Before numbers ever existed, people observed quantities, right? The human beings, they observed difference in the quantities. A big group of objects on one side and a small group of objects on another other side, right? See, before numbers existed, they observed the quantity, they sensed the quantity, but there was no formal notations to explain that quantity. Before numbers came, before counting came into picture, people sensed the change in the quantity. They used to have certain area of land for their agriculture. See, because of heavy rains and floods, the entire land would be perished into the same level. Again, they observe that again they need to regenerate their boundaries to preserve their land, right? They sensed the change in the quantities. When they import and export their raw materials or anything, when as a part of trading, they observe the changes in the quantity of stocks they have after a process of imports and exports, right? Before counting existed, they observed the change in the quantities, right? They say for counting, they used to use some substitute objects. Suppose I have these many cows. Suppose, in order to maintain the record of these cows, I used to take they used to take substitute each cow for one stone, each cow for one stone, for these many cows, these many stones. That's how they used to maintain the record of the assets they have, right? For maintaining the record of the quantity of assets they have, they used to maintain that level of substitute useless objects as a reference of comparison and to maintain the records. So for such a huge assets, for that huge stocks, it is not possible to maintain that substitute of objects, right? It is still double huge. It will be instead of maintaining a single stock of quantity, we need to maintain double quantities for that, which is really really a burden, right? That necessity had driven human beings to go to the next level of abstraction, that is numbers. That's how the aspect of numbers came into play. See, the usage of numbers, the human beings, they named, they gave their own style of notations for certain fixed quantities, right? And another aspect is patterns. In my previous videos I explained a lot of things regarding patterns, right? See, human beings, they used to, human, our ancient ancestors, ancient human beings of the earth, they used to observe the patterns, but they had no formal language to explain those patterns. They used to maintain the physical records of those changes through drawings and through writings, right? Those same patterns were explained in this current scenario using equations, right? We use mathematical equations to explain the physical behavior, especially we use them in physics, right? Consider an example of in fluid mechanics, as well as a best example is dynamics. In dynamics, we explain the phenomena of object motion and its position using, and its changes using pure mathematical equations, especially using vectors and calculus, right? I will be covering every type of topic that I'm mentioning as a part of this general explanation, right? It's a long, it will be a really really exciting and long journey, but you'll enjoy a lot once you got connected with the subject. Before symbols ever existed, they used to observe the patterns, because we use those symbols to write our equations, right? Before symbols ever there were formally made, they maintain the linguistic record of patterns through drawings, through writings, etc. See, because they lack symbols, they used to lack writing equations, right? See, before equations ever existed, they adapted the ability of abstraction, removing the unnecessary details which will never ever get involved in their calculations, right? Maintaining them as a characteristics will be really really burden thing, because they are not much involved in their general calculations, so they used to remove those unnecessary details and mention which are really necessary and widely in use, which that certain domain of information which people really needed so that they can understand how to use it, right? That's how they adapted the ability of abstraction. In this order, they developed a new type of thinking, that is mathematical thinking. See, this is all about the true origin necessity of adapting the mathematical thinking among the human beings. That's it, guys. Let's meet with the other topic in the next video. Until then, bye bye.